And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to do our quick NBA recap of all the games that went down last night, all the important news that you need to hear, and everything that you need to know. So, first game on the list that we're going to talk about is the Boston Celtics going up against the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks ended up winning 120-118, which is very, very surprising because obviously, like the Celtics, they are the favorites to win the East. And not only that, they also held a 30-point lead at halftime. And they ended up, the score was, I'm looking at the score right now, I'm just doing the math. The Celtics were up 68-38 at halftime. And that lead started to dwindle away in the second half. This team started playing better. I don't know what it is with the Boston Celtics, but it seems like whenever it's a common trend this season, and it's still a common trend like in their overall career, like their overall years as a franchise, and at least recently. Because I can't really think of many franchises who seem like they have the game in the bag, and then they end up losing. Other than the Clippers, that's literally the only other team that ends up losing these games that they should have won. Because a lot of people think that the Celtics should have won, and it really stems back to when they drafted Tatum. Because I don't want to be a Tatum hater at the moment, but Jason Tatum, there hasn't really been much that he's done in this league, but a lot of Boston Celtics fans continue to say he is the best. He is one of the best players, and all the time it's like they just get these all the time it's like, oh, he's the best player. He's only 19. He's only 20. Those type of allegations. I'm sure if you were a regular NBA fan, you'd hear these allegations before of Jason Tatum being one of the best players. And you usually expect one of your best players and one of the best players in the league to be able to win a lot of these big games. And Jason Tatum is one of the few who doesn't. And there's really no excuse because his team is good. He has a great, his team is great, and he is great as well. And he hasn't won anything either. And I digress in that whole Tatum rant, but this game, along with several others this season, it just shows the common pattern that the Celtics have, where it's like they have this big lead, but then they get too lazy, they get relaxed, and then, whoops, our threes aren't falling as much in the second half. Oh, it doesn't matter, we're up by 30, the team starts hitting more shots. Oh, we're up by 20 still, the team hits more shots. Oh, crap, it's tied. And it's like, you can't, when you are a team as dominant as the Celtics, you can never let up like that, ever. And I feel like that's sort of, I don't want to call it the immaturity of the Celtics, but that's sort of what it feels like. Because I don't understand how a team this stacked can end up cracking under such great pressure. It does not make any sense to me. And it's not even like they played bad either. Like, Jason Tatum, he ended the game with 37 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, basic stats that you'd expect him to get. And Jaylen Brown ended the game with 24 points, again, basic stats that you expect these players to get. But they end up losing. And the reason why they lose is because of their three-point percentage. They shot 28% from the field as a team. That is not going to be enough to go up against a team that's shooting 50% from the field, from three. The Hawks shot 18 for 36 from three as a team, and that ultimately killed the other team. DeJounte Murray ended the game with 19 points and 15 assists. Very impressive work coming in from him. DeAndre Hunter ended the game with 24 points. Bogdanovic ended the game with 22 points. Everybody in the starting lineup ended the game with double figures, which really is it's concerning because the Celtics, I've said it several times how the Celtics are a great defensive team. And they're one of the best defensive teams in the league right now. So the fact that all of the starters ended up getting double figures and putting up these kind of numbers is absurd, and it should not happen to the Boston Celtics. Now, Carrito is back in the chat. What's up, Carrito? Hello, I am just playing 2K. Well, I mean, that game kind of stinks. I'm not even going to lie. That game is really, really bad. But that's just my personal opinion. They do not get any of the ratings right for any of those players. They don't get... It's really bad, in my personal opinion. But let's continue talking about the rest of these games. The San Antonio Spurs, they ended up beating the Phoenix Suns without Victor Wembanyama. So, does the team play better with or without Victor? I'm totally kidding with that statement. They play better with Victor. But the Suns, they ended up having two players really dominate this game, and the rest of the players were just there. And that's really the problem when it comes with these Suns. I say it all the time. Their offensive consistency is going to determine who wins these games. And there are times where some of the players are good. There are times where some of the players are shooting bad. And that's normal. Like, we're human. That's to be expected. But it's when they play bad that's where the team is at its most dangerous. Now, Devin Booker, he ended the game 36 points, 14 of 28 from the field. Kevin Durant ended the game with 29 points, 12 of 17 from the field. Bradley Beal ended the game 4 for 11 from the field with 9 points. And see, as you could see, with the performance coming in from Booker and Kevin Durant, it's like, where is Bradley Beal and his scoring? If Bradley Beal was there with his scoring, they would have ended up winning this game. But he wasn't, and they did not have the defense to be able to fall back on. Granted, the Spurs did score only 104 points, but you also have to take into account for the fact they did not have Wembanyama. So obviously that's going to be a lot of production that you're not getting from a very talented rookie, even though the rest of the players, they played relatively good. Jeremy Sochan, since Wemby wasn't there, he had a great game, 26 points and 18 rebounds, so there was no Wemby to steal his rebounds. And Devin Vassell ended the game with 26 points, and Zach Collins ended the game with 18 points. And again, that was really it in terms of scoring for the Spurs. And they didn't really need to worry about scoring that much. And all they had to do was worry about stopping the big three, because the big three were the only people really doing anything on the offensive side of the ball. Carito in the chat saying, I'm doing a challenge on 2K. I have to start from the 60s and build a dynasty in every era. And dynasty to him is 3+ rings. Okay, so that is very interesting. Do you consider a dynasty being 3 straight, or do you consider a dynasty being 3 in a certain span? Defin Willia, hey, how you doing? I'm good. How about you? But what do you guys consider a dynasty? Do you consider a dynasty 3 straight years of winning championships, or do you consider it 3 years in a relatively close span? Because I do know that like a lot of sports, they tend to have dynasties. Like if you look at the Pats dynasty, the Pats didn't three-peat, but they did go back-to-back, and they ended up winning 1, then they lost, then they ended up winning 2 in a row. So you have no idea, like, what is a dynasty? I'd like to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. Okay. Defin Willia has a lot of things to say in the comments. I'm looking cool. My voice is... Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. It's nice to hear that I am good. That's what they're saying. That's their words, not me. But Karitos in the chat, he says, just win 3 rings at any time and you have your big 3. I mean, at any time? So, like, any time within the decade or any time, like, at all? Because you have to, there has to be, like, some sort of span. And there has to be, like, I mean, do we have 3 rings in, like, a 5-year span? 3 rings in a 6-year span? Like, which is it? I mean, you have no idea. So, which is my favorite game? Now, I don't know exactly, do you mean, like, which was my favorite game of last night? Like, which was my favorite game to watch from last night? Or which is, like, just my favorite game in general? Because that's a lot of questions to ask. And yes, of course I like basketball, Defin Willia. I'm literally doing a basketball podcast, so yes, I love basketball and I love talking about basketball. But I digress. Speaking of basketball, we're going to talk about more about basketball, and now we're going to go into the Dallas Mavericks. They ended up beating the Jazz 115-105. not really much that needs to be said going into this one because it's like, okay, it's a great team and going up against a really bad team that's in the middle of rebuilding. Luka Doncic ended the game with 29 points, 13 assists, 12 rebounds. Yes, I would like to see your idea, by the way. Just answering the chat for those of you guys on the audio side, so that way you know exactly what I'm doing. But regardless, again, another almost 30-point game from Luka Doncic, 30-point triple-double coming in from him. Kyrie Irving also ended the game with 27 points and 5 assists. Daniel Gafford ended the game with 13 points and 11 rebounds. So again, overall, a great performance coming in from all of these teams and all of these players, and Luka Doncic specifically. And let's just see, are there any other important games that I should talk about? So the Kings, they ended up playing against the Sixers, and they ended up winning. And the Kings ended up winning 108-96. And Maxey ended the game with 29 points. And unfortunately, obviously, Maxey, he sort of needs Joel Embiid in order to perform relatively well. And on the Kings side, however, Sabonis ended the game with 11 points, 10 assists, and 13 rebounds. And he has now set a new NBA record for most consecutive double-doubles in a season, with 54 since the NBA and ABA merger. And that's honestly, obviously this is a very big achievement. He passes Kevin Love in this award. And the fact that this guy wasn't even selected to be an all-star just shows how bad the fan voting really is. And Carrito has a question in the chat. What should NBA do about fan behavior? Depends on what you're asking. What exactly about fan behavior? How they act in the games, how they talk to the players in games. That's a very broad question. You might need to be a little more specific, just so I know exactly what I'm answering and what I'm getting into it. But regardless, we are out of time for, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this more. I wish I could talk more about basketball, on this segment, but we are running out of time. And I'm going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about the NBA power rankings of this week, since they were just announced, and maybe even some of the power rankings from last week. But I will be right back after this short break.